Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. We're in just a few minutes. I say we'll give it to around 12:03 to let some folks enter the webinar. In the meantime, while we wait, maybe a little exercise in the chat. Feel free to kind of plug in where you're streaming from, maybe borough or specific neighborhood in New York City. But yeah, we'll get started in about 2 to 3 minutes. Nice. I see some citywide representation, some Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Lower East Side, Harlem. Any folks from Staten Island, the Bronx? Thanks for joining us today. We'll give it about 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Guillermo Gomez, Director of Programs at Urban Design Forum, one of the organizers of the New City Critics Fellowship. I'm joined today by Mariana Mogalevich for today's information session for the New City Critics Fellowship. If you're still getting to know the Urban Design Forum, UDF connects and inspires New Yorkers to design, build, and care for a better city. We're a member-powered organization of over 1,000 civic leaders committed to a more just future for our city, and we believe the built environment, our neighborhoods, buildings, public spaces, and infrastructure shapes our city's health, culture, and economy. We bring together New Yorkers of diverse backgrounds and experiences to learn, debate, and design a vibrant city for all. We recognize that so few people have an opportunity to shape the public conversation on the future of New York City. So we want to see kaleidoscopic coverage on not only the marquee projects, but also on the transformation of our neighborhoods. We want writers to speak to the public and not just to those engaged with design and development on a daily. And we think this is the time for new, courageous, and informed voices to emerge and ignite conversation for our collective future. So thank you for joining us here. I hope you'll apply, and I'd love to kind of pass the mic next on to Mariana Mogalevich of Urban Omnibus, our visionary partner on this fellowship program.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks, Guillermo. So I'm Mariana. I've been co-organizing the fellowship with Guillermo. I'm editor-in-chief of Urban Omnibus. For those not familiar, we're the Architectural League's online publication dedicated to observing, understanding, and shaping the city. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. Urban Omnibus and New City Critics, we partner with Urban Design Forum, and Urban Omnibus is a program of the Architectural League of New York, which is an independent forum that supports critically transformative work in the allied fields that shape the built environment and stimulates thinking, debate, and action on today's converging crises of racism, inequity, and climate change in service of a more livable and just world. To give you a little bit more background, the Architectural League and Urban Design Forum created the New City Critics Fellowship back in 2022 in honor of Michael Sorkin, who was a beloved board member of both of our organizations. Sorkin's death was a huge loss to the world of thinking and action in architecture and the shaping of landscapes and cities. He was a spectacularly good writer. He was fearless and funny and adept at exposing and explaining the systems of power that create the built environment and how they manifest in specific projects. Sorkin was also a mentor and publisher for so many young thinkers and writers. And so we launched the fellowship as a fitting way to honor him. And so we started our first cycle of the New City Critics Fellowship in 2022 with an inaugural cohort of 6 fellows, and are really excited now to be kicking off our second iteration of the fellowship. Okay, so what is the fellowship and why are we doing it? We set this fellowship really to address two issues at once that are both different and related and naughty, with a K. On the one hand, we're looking at a landscape of architectural and urban criticism historically and still to this day that's really been dominated by critics from similar backgrounds, most often white and male and socioeconomically privileged. We're still in 2024 at a time where there's been one Black architecture critic at a major city newspaper ever. And at the same time, of course, we're seeing architectural and urban criticism as an arena that's shrinking. Newspapers and magazines have moved away from having full-time critics on staff. And as we're also aware, and even in the time since we started this fellowship, the number of newspapers and magazines publishing at all continues to shrink in number. But even in this challenged and challenging landscape, we also know that the criticism that we do have remains really powerful in some ways. Prominent critics here in New York City, like Justin Davidson or Michael Kimmelman, continue to sway a lot of thinking. We've seen folks like Christopher Hawthorne, formerly in Los Angeles, moving from being an architecture critic of the LA Times to being in city government as chief design officer. But we're asking, are a small group of critics with these rare prominent platforms really attending to the full extent of the systems and spaces and projects that define the very contours of our lives? Obviously, our answer is no, hence the New City Critics Fellowship. Some of the ways that we're thinking and illustrating really the need for more discourse and diverse perspectives is made vivid thinking about some of the emblematic topics of concern in the city today. Just to highlight a few in this present moment, we're looking at monumental challenges in planning for the city's future that we're not hearing a lot about. The City of Yes zoning resolutions have huge implications for the housing crisis, for the shape and the future of urban design that we need to be having conversations about. Obviously, very fresh this spring, student encampments have raised a number of critical issues, from policing and protests in public space to the state of the public sphere, and also challenge us to think about urban space and processes in all of its transnational dimensions. Below that, we've got an image from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers rendering of a proposed flood wall on the waterfront in Greenpoint, and our adaptation and new infrastructure and approaches to meet the climate crisis and its differential impacts on neighborhoods in our daily life are another obviously major topic of our lives. Finally, again, just examples thinking about the burgeoning and beyond development and gentrification well underway in parts of the city like the South Bronx. So we put these out here in no means as a sort of summary or as coextensive with the range of the subjects of inquiry that we're hoping to see from fellows. But if an essential goal of criticism is to see more deeply and help an audience of readers understand why something matters and what its origins and impacts are, all of these and so many more are topics that we should be examining and writing about from a really diverse range of perspectives and of life experiences. And so in our first cohort, our fellows, to give some examples, tackled subjects that included a critical and joyful look at the ways that we're reusing and managing flood-prone lots bought out by the city and state in the Rockaways, an investigation of the important role of community banks in urban development through specific buildings, an exploration of the careers of diasporic Haitian urbanists, really exploring those for lessons about legitimacy and authenticity for Black urbanists. Fellows also started projects on air conditioning, looking at basement living from the residents' perspective, thinking about community and belonging in queer club and ballroom spaces, and much more. So I'm going to pass it back to Guillermo now to share a little bit about who we're hoping to engage with in this next fellowship round.
So we're excited to build our second cohort of New Cities Critics Fellows. And this fellowship is, again, as much as an exercise of redefining criticism about the city as it is about kind of shaping a new group of fearless and young voices. So we often find ourselves in the design and development profession kind of talking within siloed spaces. So we're thinking of so how are we communicating these issues we care so deeply about in cities to new and broader audiences. So today we wanted to point out who we're hoping to engage with in our next cohort. So we're welcoming applicants, early to mid-career writers or urbanists deeply committed to making cities legible to broad audiences. You should be passionate about introducing readers to, again, the very complex, delightful, fraught experiences of our cities and shedding light on how neighborhoods are shaped, managed, and lived in. Candidates should possess experience in both writing and urban practice in some way, though we expect that balance to vary. And we encourage submissions that demonstrate prior publication and significant engagement in the field of cities and urbanism. Perhaps you're a designer or urban practitioner by day with a deep passion for writing on the weekends and looking for opportunities to build a larger portfolio of critical writing. Or you're a published scholar or journalist with a deep interest and focus on the way neighborhoods are designed and developed. We think those that straddle these two areas will see really the greatest benefit of the fellowship's offerings. We also know that many of you wear many hats, which we see as a valued perspective. So we also welcome applicants from a range of disciplines and experiences to apply. So storytellers of varying ages and experiences, writers, scholars, advocates, artists, curators, zine publishers, podcasters, who are committed to producing, again, critical work about the shape and experience of the city. We don't want to set constraints on years of experience or age, but again, as I mentioned, we want to shape a cohort of early to mid-career writers and urbanists that will find a value in that 9-month fellowship. You should also want to build community. We aim to build a cohort of 6 individuals who lean on each other's curiosities and grow together. Beyond the support in developing projects and skills during the fellowship, applicants should really be searching for co-conspirators to broaden their understanding and imagination together. Lastly, we want to point out fellows must live and work in the New York metropolitan area for the duration of the program to be considered. Our bi-weekly Monday sessions will be meeting in person at either the League or the Forum offices in Lower Manhattan, so remote participation is not an option. If you are not based in New York City when applying, you will need to provide proof or a plan of demonstrating your commitment to being in New York City during the fellowship. I'll pass it back to you, Mariana, to share a little bit more on the format and the timeline.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the general timeline. You have a slide in front of you with a very specific timeline for how the fellowship will play out over the 9-month course. Applications are open for another 3 weeks. They're due on June 20th, and we'll be working to officially assemble our cohort of 6 critics in early August. The fellowship is going to start right after Labor Day on September 9th with an orientation, and then we'll be running through May 19th of next year with, as Guillermo mentioned, in-person meetings every other Monday evening. And we'll be planning on a final public event sharing and celebrating the fellows' work in early June. The term of the fellowship itself will be divided into 5 modules where the cohort is going to start by reading together and really reflecting on critical texts on the city. And then we'll expand out from there to explore different themes, focusing on writing about urban places and projects, writing with and about different actors in city making, reviewing texts, objects, and events as a form of urban and cultural criticism. And the way it works is in each module, fellows meet with and work with a slate of guest writers and editors. In the first cycle of the fellowship, our interlocutors included some of our program advisors, Garnett Cadigan, Dario Calmese, Vincent Cunningham, Carolina Miranda, and Sukjong Hong, as well as Alexandra Lang. They also met with journalists and writers like Tanvi Misra, Karina Delvaje-Shorsky, the scholar and thinker Mabel Wilson, Mazin Sidamed of Documented, Emily Badger from the New York Times, and a number of urbanists and city makers of different stripes. Within each module incorporates discussion and sessions with our guests and writing assignments that we develop and workshop together towards publication in a dedicated New City Critics vertical that we'll be publishing on Urban Omnibus and will be going out to our newsletters over the course of the fellowship. So there will be multiple assignments and opportunities for publication of all the fellows' work over the 9 months. Okay, so what we are aiming to do and really offer fellows is to really support the 6 fellows in their professional and creative development. We're looking for 6 writers who will be providing with a stipend of $7,500 over the 9 months of the fellowship. We designed the fellowship to accommodate participants' employment elsewhere. So the assumption is that folks are working, employed or self-employed, and that the fellowship works around those obligations. So the fellows meet for biweekly sessions in the evening for workshop and discussion sessions, and those meetings take different forms. We have workshops with guests focused on critical voice and craft, and also exploring strategies and tactics for publishing and in the media world. We'll have editing workshops both with outside guests and editors, and workshops with the cohort, who are really everybody's first readers and best editors in the process. We'll also have sessions and support from the Urban Omnibus and New City Critics team as fellows are shaping and refining and producing original work for publication over the course of the fellowship. And at the same time, throughout the fellowship, we'll be connecting participants with critics and writers and editors, built environment professionals, cultural institutions that are aligned with their interests and lived experiences and can help them forward their work. So our big goal here is really to equip a new generation of critics from underrepresented backgrounds with new skills, with a meaningful network, and to support them in carrying out powerful writing that's going to make urban processes legible and argue for the city that they want to live in. And we also see, as the fellowship continues, in addition to the support of individual writers, about shifting the broader culture of city criticism. So we're investing in and we're publishing 6 particular people and voices, but also really emphasizing that the fellows are a cohort that's working together to have and to host bigger discussions about the future of the city and the future of criticism and writing on the city. So, so we're looking to the fellows to be bringing critical attention to the ways that we plan and design and live in cities, to work together in developing new critical imaginations, imaginations that can also manifest in new formats and new forums, again, looking to help the public understand the rich and complex places and processes that, that shape our lives and our experiences. So I'm going to pass it back to Guillermo to walk us through the application portal and the application itself.
Great. So let's walk through the workforce application. The link to the portal is accessible on Urban Design Forum, the Architectural League, and Urban Omnibus websites. You will need to register your email to submit the application process and access the portal. You'll provide your contact information, and we've also included a voluntary self-identification form. You'll be required to submit a statement of interest, resume or CV, and writing samples. For the statement of interest, we ask that you please submit an original 500-word response to any piece of writing about the city published in the last 3 years. We want to understand your perspective on current urban writing and learn about the ideas and values really driving your work. So this is an opportunity for you to share the conversations you're engaged in, the critiques you have, and how you position yourself in the discourse on cities. We also want you to submit a writing sample of published work that should not exceed 3,000 words, which again should give us a sense of your interests, curiosities, and perspectives. You may include multiple short works or an excerpt on a longer work. In addition to a required statement of interest and required published writing samples, we welcome an optional submission of additional work samples. This could be other published or non-published writing, or for those of you who work in other mediums, we welcome submissions in photography or photo essays, podcasts, excerpts, exhibition photos, design build projects, you name it. Again, this submission is optional, but we just want to recognize candidates may also be working in different modes and mediums besides writing. So some important dates to keep in mind: award force applications will close on June 20th at 11:59 p.m. Our 2024-2025 New City Critics Fellows will be selected by our incredible advisory board: Suk Jung Hung, Dario Gomez, Carolina Miranda, Alexandra Lang, and Garnett Cadigan. And New City Critics program staff will also be conducting 30-minute interviews with semifinalists at the end of July, and selected New City Critics will be notified in early August. So before we open it up to questions, I know there's already a couple in the chat as well in the Q&A box. A quick note that we will be sending a reminder email 2 weeks before the deadline that will include a link to this video, as well as a link to frequently asked questions. And for the questions that we cannot cover today, we'll try our best to include those answers on the FAQ. So with that, I will open it up to the floor so we can start fielding some questions in the chat. I know a couple have already come in. Oops, okay.
Okay, should we start from the top of the Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So our first question: can college students participate in this fellowship? And I'm going to bundle it with, can PhD students apply? So I think the way to answer that one is, as Guillermo said, we're looking for fellows. We're defining, as early and mid-career who have a record of publication and engagement with the issues that the fellowship covers. So given that, I think it is somebody who's still in college is unlikely to be at that point in their career. I don't think that we say no, but we are pointing to people who have had a chance to develop their work and their interests, which PhD students can apply if their point in their studies gives them enough time, as for anyone, to commit to the fellowship and all it entails. I don't think that we got into this, but on top of our regular sessions, given reading to prepare for those and the writing assignments, we're expecting a pretty significant commitment of time from the fellows in order to be ready for those sessions and researching and writing and really getting the most out of the fellowship. So that's the big thing to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's also answering that question on time commitment outside of the Monday sessions. Maybe to quickly scroll down, someone asked, what time are the Monday sessions? They're going to be in the evening from around 6 to 8:30 p.m. And again, refer back to those dates that are included, that were included on this webinar that are also listed within the award force. Okay, let's grab some more questions.
Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of questions about the different kinds of publications that would what counts as published work. Okay, so what we're looking to see from asking for published work is getting a sense of your writing, your style, your strengths, your fluency, as well as your yeah, I mean, we're trying to get a sense of you as a writer, and again, understand that this is not, the first time that you're sort of diving into this exercise. So could it be an academic sample, or could it be something, I saw another one, that's self-published, like a blog or by one's organization. I think all of those are fair game. We're looking for past experience and hoping that you're selecting work that's really gonna give the jury an idea of you as a writer. Co-authored writing, we need to see something that helps us understand your writing. So I'm gonna say no, unless there's a really clear way that that's going to help, again, the jury understand you as a writer.
Right. I see one here on how many applications do you anticipate from this cycle. It's hard to tell, but last year we had around 200 submissions or so. So we're expecting around the same amount this year.
Okay. And I know there was another writing sample question about works past 3 years. Are they acceptable? Yes, I don't think there's a time limit on when those samples would come from. I'm also seeing maybe in a different direction. I don't know if we should, I'm gonna maybe combine this question about how honed do project ideas need to be for the application and the opportunity to strategize during the fellowship, as well as the specific volume of output. Just to go back to the structure of the fellowship, each module will have its own focus and assignment, and fellows will be creating original writing for that module. There are 5 of them. So there will be incremental exercises and a larger assignment for each one of those. Those are all being developed for publication, but we're not expecting that every fellow will be publishing everything that they produce in the fellowship. So less than 5. And to the question about project, we're looking for people coming in with interests and sensibilities, and we're developing those and learning together, as well as working on specific exercises during the fellowship. So yes, we're expecting people not to be coming in, with a research proposal. That's not the focus of the fellowship, but to have, a clear articulation of interests and direction, and that will take different directions over the course of the fellowship in terms of the writing projects.
Maybe just quickly swing over to the chat. I saw one question about missing dates. I think we expect you to attend all scheduled sessions, especially the orientation, retreat, and capstone event. That said, if you miss 1 or maximum 2 sessions with enough notification to program staff, and of course to the rest of your fellow cohort, it won't be an issue.
Okay, I'm seeing maybe I'm going to combine a couple of geographic questions. Somebody who lives in Philadelphia, works in Northern New Jersey, but engages with New York quite regularly. Somebody who wants to apply with a statement that discusses a place other than New York. Okay, so I think to start with the statement, we're looking to understand, again, your writing, your sensibilities, your interests, the conversations that you're interested in. So you don't have to submit writing or a statement that's specifically focused on New York. If it is giving us a sense of your sort of stake in critical writing on the city more generally and in a way that's applicable to the fellowship. In terms of location, so as we've said, the fellowship meets in person. The writing that we'll be doing will be focused on New York City and the metropolitan area. There's no residency requirement like living within the 5 boroughs, but you need to know that your life is such that you can be participating in something on a regular basis that that is in place in New York City and engages in a substantive way. Does that seem about right?
Yeah. One here on kind of disciplinary background. I think, as we mentioned, we encourage designers or other type of urban practitioners and builders to apply, especially if you have a significant body of work. Of course, understanding that if by day you are generally kind of a practitioner and not a writer, I think we will consider that in the application. But I think providing a significant and solid body of work with your application is encouraged. Um, oh, here's one kind of a response to an article written beyond 3 years. I think we're flexible. It's not like a strict 3 year window. I think within 3 to 5 years is probably fine. I think just something kind of significant that happened in the past 3 years of written piece, right, Mariana? The
Mhm.
3 to 5 year window is, I think, is flexible.
Yeah. There's a question about a statement of interest being in response to an event as opposed to a piece of writing. I suppose so, if you can, really articulate and frame how that's responding to a certain critical conversation in urbanism.
Right, I agree. And I've seen a couple, Mariana, within published work. Maybe you've answered this earlier. There's a ton
Oh,
of
I was
questions
I
going.
was about there are a ton of about prior publications. I think we
Right,
want to stress again, this is a fellowship in critical writing. So when we talk sort of about emerging writers, that doesn't mean you're doing this for the first time through the fellowship. We're really here to work with people who are developing a practice of critical writing to really grow and develop that together. So if if you are brand new to writing, I think that is not the profile of who will really benefit most from this. So we're asking for published writing again, as we've said, it can be published in different ways, but the fellowship is really for folks who have a writing practice and a commitment to criticism through that form, and can demonstrate that through past work.
right. And then there's one here on again that window of acceptable years. I think 3 years is acceptable.
Yep.
Um,
In the criticism piece, here's an interesting one. Be in response to something that is prose or poetry, or does it have to be research-based? No, absolutely not. Prose poetry is great. We're really interested in engaging with a wide variety of approaches, again, to understanding and interpreting and debating the state of the city. This also isn't an academic fellowship, so we're not looking for people to be submitting academic response papers to an article. The assignment is really, again, to sort of understand the conversations, the approaches that you're interested in, and what your particular, stake and direction is in that world. So to maybe the same end, there's a question about, can we look at the built fabric in general, like the idea of monuments, historic preservation, design, urban design ideas of the future and the past? I'm not sure if this is in the application or the fellowship, but all of those dimensions are fair game. Again, in the fellowship, we'll really be engaging with those questions in the context of New York City in this moment in time.
There's an interesting one here too, down below. What if your published writing is not about urbanism? My writing will show analysis, criticism, but about philosophy and race, not about architecture and urban planning. Um, Look, from my perspective, I think you can agree with Mariana. I think we're excited and interested in seeing new perspectives on the city and city life and city making. It doesn't have to be technically tied to architecture or planning, but I think it should argue in some way or be framed around kind of the experience of living in cities. So I think if you can frame it in that way and argue it in that way. Then I think totally acceptable and welcome.
Couple more questions about the writing sample engaging with places other than New York City. Just to reiterate, yes, that is fine. And a couple of other opportunities, I think, to say, we're requiring certain writing, but also do have a field for optional samples. So please do avail yourself of that to, again, help the jury get the best possible sense of your experience and range and interest. So in this particular case, if you're submitting poetry and also can demonstrate engagement in more topical or prose work, yes, that's what that field is for. And I think another question about the fellowship being open to people in different fields, but interested in developing a framework around urbanism. Absolutely. Yes, this is not exclusively by any means for folks in the field, but looking to assemble a cohort, again, with a real commitment to critical writing and understanding of the city that can be coming from different disciplines and experiences. Okay. Seen a couple more technical questions just about the interview and application process. I think just to say that those will be on Zoom. The jury will select a number of finalists who will proceed to short interviews before the short list is completed.
And yes, we'll be scheduling those on the last week of July and the notifications in early August, and then promptly starting the fellowship in September right after Labor Day.
We've got a couple of questions about the past cohorts. Just to repeat, there's one past cohort. This is the second time that we are doing this fellowship. So past experience does not dictate future results. I think I will say, what we can say now is the fellows have all been continuing to publish and pursue work following from the work that they developed over the course of the fellowship. We don't have really like more specific tracking of cohorts to offer. But I think as we showed in the presentation, taking a look at their work on urban omnibus is one great way to get a sense of what they were up to and some of the things that that we focused on and were thinking about in the first fellowship.
You may have already responded to this one, Mariana, but just on honing in on project ideas, we don't expect you to come with a specific idea or propose a particular like research focus with your application. That work will be developed during the fellowship.
Okay, and maybe we'll do this last question on the writing sample. So again, just to distinguish the writing sample, published past work that lets us understand you as a writer, the response statement that we're looking at, again, there's a lot of flexibility there. I'm not sure what, sorry, I'll read the question about the writing sample, including relevant discussions of past personal experience as opposed to more traditional forms of critical engagement. I don't think that we see personal experience outside of critical engagement. And so again, this is, we're looking for applicants as writers, to show us through this sample how you engage as person, as critic, as writer, as urbanist, with the questions and the issues that you're sort of bringing to the fore through your selection of response. But we don't see those things as opposed.
Right. I think we covered a lot of ground, and again, we'll be posting an FAQ later next week. With as many questions as possible that weren't answered today. And if you have any specific questions, whether that's specifically on the workforce application portal or on the fellowship or on the application process, feel free again to reach out to submissions@urbandesignforum.org. Do you want to squeeze in any more?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to pick
I
up a
think there's
couple
still,
that say that we
yeah.
missed in the chat here. Somebody who was asking about age being outside of the target group. No, again, it's really about being at a stage in career and writing and development of these interests that this fellowship will really be a useful and productive experience at this time. Can you participate as a foreigner living in New York City? Absolutely. We cannot sponsor visas for fellowship participants, but if you are living in New York City, there are no, why am I blanking on the word? Residency or
Limitations or
limitations or requirements in that sense. We've also got a question about missing 1 to 2 of the dates. Should we still apply? Yes, that is fine. It is a commitment to all the sessions. We understand things happen and 1 or 2 sessions might not, might pose conflict. I think there's a spot actually on the application form to let us know if that's the case, but that wouldn't disqualify any applicants.
So 2 questions here in the Q&A box. Is there a page showing past fellow cohorts? Yes, the first cohort is featured on Urban Design Forum's website. If you go to New City Critics, I believe as well on the Architectural League, and all of their kind of published works are on Omnibus. And then one last one here. Will the recording be available later? Yes, we will we'll upload it to YouTube and circulate it next week with the FAQ.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, I say we call it an info session. Or any last kind of words, Mariana, before we wrap up?
No, I think just to thank everybody for their interest in all of these questions, and that we're really so excited to read everyone's applications. And again, just to reiterate, deadline June 20th, we'll post the video and circulate questions also on the application site quite soon.
Great. Well, thank you, Mariana. I'll see you soon and in person. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, Thursday, June 20th, 11:59 p.m. is the application deadline. And then if you have any additional questions, you can email that submissions@urbandesignforum.org as well. Hope you'll apply, and we look forward to reading your submissions. Have a good rest of your week, everyone.